book lovers! It is G-Swizz here, and I'm here today to talk about some of my favorite new authors I read in 2020. So it's December. It is finally the last month of 2020. There's been a lot going on in my life and the lives of others. Funnily enough, I'd say that 2020, despite it being not the best year in some cases, it ended up being probably the best reading year I have had. It was very rare to find a very disappointing book. I will be talking about some disappointing reads that I read in 2020, but considering that I've read around over 160 books so far, out of those 160 books, I've only had like, I think 10 duds, maybe even under 10 duds. I've really enjoyed all the books and manga that I've read this year, and not only that, I read from so many new authors. Yes, this is meant to be a 7 on Sunday, which I am the host of 7 on Sunday, by the way, and if you want to do a prompt in the future, check out the 7 on Sunday Goodreads page, link down in the description. This is not going to be a 7 on Sunday. I mean, it is technically 7 on Sunday, but it's more like an 11 on Sunday, because today I want to talk about 11 new authors that I read from this year, and I absolutely enjoyed their books. So without further ado, let's get into the video. I'm going to be starting off with Cinda Williams-Chima. I have not read Flamecaster. I'm actually referring to the Seven Realms series. I just didn't want to pick up the box set because it's really heavy. So I decided that I was going to hold up Flamecaster as my prop. Cinda Williams-Chima is an amazing author. This series is so slept on in the booktube community. I understand that there are a few booktubers that have been trying to hype it up for years, and I apologize for not jumping on the train when I should have, because the fact that Cinda Williams-Chima made this world is just incredible. At the very same time, I did not want to finish all the books in this world at once, so I've decided to split it in half. I've decided to read the Shattered Realms series in 2021 as I've read the Seven Realms series in 2020. It does take a while to get into. There's a lot of world building and there are a lot of names. There's just a lot to remember. So if you guys ever find yourself struggling reading The Demon King or reading one of the Seven Realms books away from the book that you read last, an example for me is that I read The Demon King and then 2 months later I picked up The Exiled Queen. I totally forgot every single one of the side characters' names. There is a character list and a character description page that Cinda Williams-Chima has made on the internet. You can also download it, I think, as an Excel file or as a PDF or something like that if you want to be able to keep that. I used that in order for me to continue on with the series, and I'm so happy that I did, because at the end of the day, the Seven Realms series is one of the best series. It has the best slow burn romance that I've read in a very long time. Actually, no, I've read a very good amount of slow burn romances, but this was one that was just done so well, and I read it after a series that really emotionally damaged me for fantasy romance. Seven Realms did it better. Seven Realms got me through it. So I'm just gonna mention that book now, and I'm also gonna mention the author, because I feel like as much as I did not like the final book in the trilogy, the author is an amazing writer and they know how to write romantic scenes. I can't say that they don't know how to write romance, it's just the romance in this series overall ended up being very toxic in my opinion. Right now, I'm just gonna be talking about Mary E. Pearson, who is the author of The Remnant Chronicles and the Dance of Thieves duology, which I will be reading, but I'm still a little bit hesitant about because the final book in The Remnant Chronicles did not end well for me. It should not have been that long for how frustrating it was. And if you guys want to see my thoughts and my opinions and my reactions and my emotional trauma, I have a video up doing a reading vlog for this. I had to read the Seven Realms series straight after this series, and I am so thankful I did, because if I did not, I don't know how I was gonna continue on reading fantasy romance, because this fantasy romance I was so invested in, and then the final book happened and it just completely destroyed everything. As much as this was a negative experience, I have to say that the first 2 books kind of felt like a positive experience, because I was seeing this romance, this relationship develop in such a beautiful way, only to be ruined in the final book. As I said, as much as it was negative, the first 2 books were such a positive to me, and honestly this would have been such an amazing series if the final book was a lot healthier in romance than it actually was, because the first 2 books were really good. Yes, it was a little bit problematic at some points, but that could have been resolved in the 3rd book. It did not, it just got worse. But Mary E. Pearson is a new author that I read this year, and do I regret reading this series? No, I don't. As much as I invested my heart and soul into it and got my heart broken by it, I have no regrets. It's kind of like when people talk about their past relationship. They broke my heart, but I don't regret loving them. That's exactly how I feel about the first 2 books of the series. I don't regret loving these, but the whole series broke my heart. Anyway, let's talk about some positive things. This book right here also broke my heart, but it had a bit of a more positive outcome. Crown of Coral and Pearl by Mara Rutherford. I was not expecting to even read this book or like it. I just decided I just need another fantasy romance, so I'm just gonna go for this one because everyone's talking about it, everyone's hyping it up. Actually, I more read it because of the fantasy aspects, not necessarily too much about the romance. Because when you're reading this, I don't think reading it for the romance is the best idea. It's more for the plot, it's more for the sisterhood. It's also very much centered around our protagonist and the villain. And I find it very fascinating that it's more of a protagonist and villain story than it is a fantasy romance with that. This being said, I'm not necessarily going to spoil the plot of the book, but let's just say that whenever the villain is in the picture, the love interest is also kind of there, but they can't necessarily have too many separate scenes. And I'm not going to spoil that aspect of the book. You've got to read it for yourself to find out why. This being said, I think this book was very strong in plot. Mara Rutherford is an amazing writer when it comes to plot. I'm actually very sad that this is a duology and the second book is smaller than the first book. Like, I'm very nervous to get into the second book. I recently purchased the second book. This could go either way. Personally, I think that this book premise could expand upon to a 4-book series, but we're not gonna get that. That's okay. I'm just gonna have to live with what we have. Very much looking forward to reading the sequel and seeing how that goes. And now I'm gonna talk about Elise Kova. Yes, guys, I read this series before everybody was talking about A Deal with the Elf King. Really excited to read A Deal with the Elf King. Oh my goodness, I'm so excited to read Vortex Visions and Alchemist of Loom. But guys, I read the Heir Awakened series this year, and let me tell you, this was the kind of fantasy romance that I absolutely needed. Like, I swear, like, everyone was like, you want fantasy romance after what you've been reading? Here, read Elise Kova. And I made the best decision by doing that. I really do love this book series. It is so rich, it is so vivid, and it's also very much heartbreaking. So I can officially say after this series that I am Elise Kova trash. I mean, if you guys see there over on the side, that's my Elise Kova shelf. I've only read 1 series by Elise Kova. I have an entirety of 3 of her series in hardback, and then I've got A Deal with the Elf King. And then I'm very much looking forward to The Trial of Sorcerers. All the things that are lined up for Elise Kova, I want, I need, and I must have. Heir Awakens really converted me to a fandom. The next author I'm just about to mention delivered an amazing surprise through Spin the Dawn, and this is Elizabeth Lim. I love this duology so much. A Mulan retelling, but Mulan as a tailor, and it has to deal with dark magic, and it's just so good. I do have to admit, like, the second book was not the strongest. I kind of wish that the series expanded further into the more Mulan-esque side of things, or even just everything about it, like even the tailoring, all of it, like even its slow moments were so good. I just kind of wish that we got more, but that's okay. Oh my goodness, and I'm so excited for anything else that Elizabeth Lim writes, because Elizabeth Lim is an amazing writer. The way that she was able to come up with this amazing plot and then just convert it into prose. I honestly have no coherent thoughts about this book. This series is really good. If you have not yet read it, you are sleeping on it. Do not sleep on it. I'm gonna mention a big surprise. Shelby Mahurin, Serpent and Dove. Everybody was reading this book last year. I was late to the train, and the reason why I was late to the train was because I was not actively reading last year. I was not going according to what everybody was hyping up on BookTube or Book Twitter because I wasn't spending time on there. I was in a very dark place in my mental health, so I didn't. But Serpent and Dove, when I first heard the premise, I was very hesitant. I thought to myself, okay, I'm never gonna read this book because, you know, everyone's hyping it up and whatnot. But then also people are like, but it's kind of like Akamath, you know? And I'm just like, okay, well, I'm not gonna see it as that, but I'm just gonna go into it. I'm gonna read it skeptically. So I chose to read Serpent and Dove skeptically, and I think that was the best decision. You know why? Because I was able to personally dissect it. Serpent and Dove is a very hard-hitting book for anybody who has experienced religious trauma. Also, it is a very hard-hitting book for someone who used to be overly religious themselves and seeing the world from a new perspective. It was very much a hard-hitting book for me. I love Lou. I've talked about this previously. I previously identified with Reed. I do find his character a little bit problematic, not necessarily because everybody says he is. It's just he is not ready to be in a committed relationship with someone as lovely as Lou, and she definitely does deserve better. Honestly, Reed has just got to figure things out for himself. I'm just gonna say that. Yes, I read it in a very critical way. There are cringy moments in here with that like jingle that goes on that if I say, then I'm probably gonna get demonetized, so there's that. This being said, the way that Shelby Mahurin was able to capture under religion, or really a generalization of religion and its power in here, as well as writing an amazing world, an amazing concept. Honestly, I have to give her credit for that. I don't think I've ever seen someone represent religion or the dangers of religion this accurately within a book. I have to give that to Shelby Mahurin. Even though the romance and everything is technically more romanticized, I think the message behind Serpent and Dove is very important. I have not yet read Blood and Honey, but I heard that it's very much a bridge book, so we'll see where we go with that. But yeah, Shelby Mahurin, I read her book Serpent and Dove for the very first time this year. I gave it a 2.5 out of 5 stars. I do mention that, but that's because it was very hard for me to read because of how many triggering thoughts it got me thinking for a very long time, and also I'm not a big fan of the romance. This being said, it is a very important book, and I'm still trying to reevaluate my rating with this. Alright, let's get to some fun. Let's get to a really nice romance. I'm gonna be talking about The Princess Will Save You by Sarah Henning. This was a very pleasant surprise because everybody was saying, oh, this book is not really that great. Like, oh my goodness, I was tricked by the cover. I read it, I just realized, oh my goodness, I feel so highly resonated with right now. First of all, Sarah Henning was a pretty popular YA author before writing this. So she wrote The Sea Witch, which I didn't really have too much of an interest in, only because there were so many Sea Witch retellings that were coming out at the very same time, and I was just thinking to myself, cool, yes, I want to read one, but I don't want to read them all at once. So maybe one day I will read The Sea Witch, but for now, I've stuck to my Kingdoms, and yes, the Kingdom of Sand and Sky series. So good so far. I really love this book so much because personally, I felt like I could be seen in the main character, but also I could be seen in the romance, because the way that the romantic style is in here is very much the romantic style that I have, in a sense that I will do anything for love. That is exactly the message of The Princess Will Save You. It's essentially about Princess Amarande doing whatever she can to make sure that she's marrying for love and not for power. As soon as she's entitled to be queen, everybody in the kingdom is like, no, 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 like you have to get married and you have to make this marriage political. And it's similar to the Remnant Chronicles in a sense, but the Remnant Chronicles kind of delves in a different way. But she already loves someone. She is already ready to fight for this person, and he's pretty much in a hostage situation because she's refusing to marry the person who is trying to get him to marry her. Princess Amarande decides to risk her life to save the person that she loves, but also to run away from the bad guys, and it's crazy. I love this story so much because I felt like I was resonated with in Amarande, because at the end of the day, love for me is one of my biggest values, and I love that she also fights for it. That's what I saw in this book. That's why I love it so much, because she fights for it. It's pretty hardcore about it. Yes, people are like, oh my god, like she's super feminist and stuff. It's more than that. It's just a story about true love. I love that. But also the plot twist, insane. Sarah Henning just pretty much captured everything I wanted in a fantasy romance and put it in here. I loved how the story was driven by its plot, but is also very much driven by the message of how powerful love is. Another fantasy romance that takes place in a world where there's like a certain mythology that has to do with love and stuff. Bone Cries Moon. Oh my goodness, another Charlie Bow watercover. I know. Big surprise. Once again, I think I've mentioned this before. When it comes to Charlie Bow watercovers, people are like, I was tricked by the cover. Oh no. But the funny thing is, the Charlie Bow watercovers get me to start reading a lot more offers. I do an internal checklist. Like, great cover, yes. Great plot, yes. Great reviews, maybe. I don't know. Just like The Princess Will Save You, I needed to be convinced while reading this book that this was a good book. And I was. This book is really good. Loved the mythology around this book. I loved Catherine Purdy's writing. I loved her prose. I loved all three perspectives. All three of them just made the story so special. And the plot twist at the end, just like the one I just mentioned, like, why do you do this? Why do you guys do this to me? I don't know. Once again, an amazing new author that I read this year. I may as well mention this Charlie Bow watercover next because why not? Star Daughter by Shivette Thakar. Loved this book. Once again, people were like, oh my goodness, I was tricked. It wasn't that great. No, this book was so good. And guys, I don't necessarily read standalones that often, and the reason why I don't is because I hate being attached to characters only to find out I don't have another book with them. I usually refuse to buy standalones, but then I decided to purchase this one, and I don't regret purchasing this one. Star Daughter was an amazing adventure. I love the concept of it. I love the concept of the talent. It was just really good, and the idea of the star mythology, everything about it was so good, and I just don't see why people hate it. Do people find it cheesy? I don't know. It's really good. Personally, in the future, I'm gonna keep this noted. I want to read more by Shivetta Thakar. I think this was a debut as well. I find that incredible because I found this book to be written very very well. And it was a debut. I'm just blown away. And the second last author I'm going to be mentioning today that I read this year that I absolutely loved and adored and enjoyed their book was Tracy Deonn, the author of Legendborn. This book is pretty much flying like hotcakes right now. Everybody is just obsessed with Legendborn for good reason. Personally, I don't think a book has come super close to feeling kind of like reading the Mortal Instrument series or like Shadowhunter Chronicles world to me. And Legendborn has. Like, it's so weird that I'm getting these vibes from that series, but it kind of gives me that nostalgia. The mythology in this world is completely different. This being said, I wish that this world was expanded upon because it needs to be a multiverse. Tracy Deonn is a genius, and I'm so happy that this book got the recognition that it deserved because this book was not available to pre-order in Australia for a very long time. And then they decided that they were going to publish it in the UK and Australia, and I was like, oh my goodness. And now we're all talking about how good it is, and now it's like on the GOODREADS finalist. How amazing is that? And the final author I'm going to be mentioning is Roseanne A. Brown, who is the author of A Song of Wraiths and Ruin. Now, I have mentioned previously on my channel that I had put this book off for so long because everybody was talking about it and because the hype was getting to me. And then all of a sudden, I decided to read it, and then I decided to reread it. I enjoyed it that much. I absolutely love the dynamics between Malik and Karina. I love them so much, and I want to protect them so much, and I love the twists and turns that this book came with. Just all of it. A Song of Wraiths and Ruin was just all worth it. I need this to be a trilogy. I know that this is a duology, but it needs to be a trilogy, in my personal opinion. That being said, give me any extra material in the series and I will take it. I will consume it. I just need more. I really need more. Roseanne, give me more. That's gonna be it for this video today, book lovers. If you ended up enjoying it, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you haven't yet already. Also, I have social medias. I'm at itsgswizzelbooks on Twitter and Instagram, and I'm also at Goodreads. That's www.goodreads.com/gswizzle. I love you, book lovers, and I will see you later. Peace.
Started out with half and I flipped it into double. Started out with half and I flipped it into double.